The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. Summary and analysis by Brevreds. Introduction: The Gene's Journey. The basics: life is about survival. Think about the last time you watched an animal documentary. Maybe it was about lions hunting in the wild, or birds building nests. What you were seeing, on the surface, was survival, animals doing what they needed to stay alive. But underneath that action is something much smaller, something we never really think about: genes. Every living thing, from that lion chasing a gazelle to the tiniest bacteria floating in water, has one thing in common: the genes inside them are fighting to survive. Genes are like the ultimate architects. They don't sit down and plan with blueprints like humans do, but over millions of years, they've designed incredibly complex structures called bodies to help them survive. The way genes work is simple, even if their creations are not. A gene's main goal is to copy itself and pass on to the next generation. To do this, it creates bodies, animals, plants, or humans, because without bodies, genes would have no way of getting around. You can think of your body as a spaceship carrying around the genes inside of you. But genes aren't robots, and they're not conscious. They don't think in the way you and I do. Instead, they operate through trial and error over thousands, even millions of years. Genes that helped animals survive long enough to reproduce are the ones that stuck around. Those that didn't, well, they faded away. In this way, genes have created all the diversity we see today, from the sleek, fast cheetah to the slow-moving sloth. Now, here's the twist. Even though genes are masters of survival, they're not always nice about it. Genes can be selfish, and their behavior is often about ensuring their own survival, even at the expense of other organisms. Imagine a world where every animal fought constantly just to live. While that's true sometimes, survival isn't always about fighting. Some animals cooperate to survive, which leads us into the next important point. The survival game, cooperation and competition. Picture two birds sitting on a telephone wire, both chirping away, when one notices a tasty insect crawling on the ground. What happens next? Does the bird swoop down and snatch the insect for itself, or does it call its feathered friend and share the snack? In nature, these kinds of moments are happening all the time. Animals are constantly making decisions about whether to compete or cooperate. At first glance, competition seems like the obvious strategy. After all, if you're competing, you're trying to grab as many resources as possible: food, mates, territory. Take the case of lions. Male lions will sometimes fight each other to the death for control of a pride. The winning male gets access to all the females and can pass his genes on through his offspring. The loser? He's out of luck, his genes cut off from the future. But sometimes cooperation is the better strategy. A classic example is the cleaner fish and the larger fish it cleans. The cleaner fish swims right into the mouth of a bigger fish, nibbling away the parasites that could harm the larger fish. You'd think the bigger fish would just eat the cleaner, but it doesn't. Why? Because both fish benefit from the arrangement. The cleaner fish gets a meal, and the bigger fish gets rid of annoying parasites. This kind of mutual benefit where two organisms help each other survive is called symbiosis, and it's a brilliant example of how cooperation works in nature. But cooperation has a catch. It only lasts as long as it benefits both parties. If the bigger fish suddenly finds a better way to get rid of its parasites without the cleaner's help, it might start eating the cleaner fish again. This is why nature is a balance between cooperation and competition. Genes are always looking for ways to get ahead, but sometimes, getting ahead means working together. Take the story of wolves hunting in packs. Wolves are social animals, and when they hunt, they do so together. Alone, a wolf might not be able to take down large prey like a moose or an elk. But together, they can coordinate their attack, tire out their prey, and bring down a meal big enough for everyone. In a wolf pack, cooperation is key because every member benefits from the shared success of the hunt. However, not every wolf gets the same share. The alpha, or leader of the pack, usually eats first, while the lower-ranking wolves wait their turn. This shows how even in cooperation, competition still lurks beneath the surface. In another fascinating case, vampire bats, known for feeding on the blood of mammals, actually practice a kind of sharing system that keeps the colony alive. When a bat fails to find food, another bat that has had a successful night of hunting may regurgitate some of its meal for the unlucky one. This behavior might seem extremely altruistic, but it's actually a long-term survival strategy. Bats remember who shares with them, and are more likely to help those who helped them in the past. If a bat doesn't return the favor over time, it may be excluded from the group's feeding network. Cooperation here is a give and take, and it benefits the genes of both the donor and recipient. The natural world is full of these intricate relationships, where cooperation and competition are like two sides of the same coin. Even in human societies, cooperation is vital. Think about the last time you worked on a group project. If one person tried to take control and do everything, the project would likely fall apart. But when everyone shares responsibilities, success is more likely. The same is true in nature. Sometimes survival means knowing when to work together and when to compete. Kinship and family, the gene's inner circle. Let's zoom in on the idea of family for a second. When you think of animals protecting their young, you probably imagine a mama bear defending her cubs from danger, or a bird tirelessly bringing food back to its nest. These behaviors are more than just sweet, they're deeply rooted in the selfish strategy of genes. Why are animals, including humans, willing to sacrifice their time, energy, and sometimes even their lives to protect their family? It all comes down to shared genes. When a mother takes care of her baby, she's not just being a good parent. She's ensuring that her genes survive. Because the baby shares half of her genes, by helping it survive and grow, she's also helping those genes get passed on to the next generation. Take the case of meerkats. These small social animals live in groups where members often take turns standing guard while others forage for food. The sentry meerkat will give a warning call if it spots danger, like an approaching predator, allowing the rest of the group to escape. But standing guard is risky. The sentry could be the first one attacked. Why would a meerkat take that risk? It's because the group is made up of close relatives. By protecting them, the sentry is indirectly protecting its own genes. A similar thing happens with bees. The worker bees in a hive don't reproduce. Instead, they spend their lives gathering nectar, building the hive, and caring for the queen's offspring. You'd think this would be a losing strategy for the workers, right? After all, if they don't reproduce, their own genes won't be passed on. But here's the trick. Worker bees share a lot of their genes with the queen's offspring. So by helping the queen reproduce, the workers are still passing on their genes, just in an indirect way. Humans too show this kind of behavior. Siblings, parents, and even cousins often feel a strong connection and are willing to help each other out. This can be seen in how families come together during times of crisis. Think about it. If someone in your family is in trouble, you're likely to step in, even if it means putting yourself at some risk. This instinct comes from our shared genetic heritage. Helping family means helping genes survive. A more dramatic example can be found in elephant herds. Female elephants and their young stick together in tight family groups, led by the oldest female, known as the matriarch. These herds are highly protective of their young. If a calf is threatened by a predator, the whole group will rush to its defense, forming a protective circle around the baby. The reason for this fierce protection is clear: the genes of the group are at stake. Elephants are long-lived animals with slow reproductive rates, so every calf is incredibly valuable. By ensuring the survival of their young, the females are ensuring the survival of their genes. In another part of the animal kingdom, we see a strange twist on family loyalty. Naked mole rats live in colonies where only one female, the queen, reproduces, while the rest of the colony works to support her. Like bees, these workers don't pass on their own genes directly, but because they're all closely related, helping the queen pass on her genes means their genes survive too. The lesson from these examples is clear. Genes prioritize survival, and they often do so by ensuring the survival of close relatives. Whether it's a meerkat standing guard, a bee serving its queen, or a human rushing to help a sibling, the driving force behind these behaviors is the same: the survival of shared genes. A funny thing about altruism: imagine you're walking through the park and suddenly you see someone trip and drop their ice cream. You feel bad for them, right? You might even feel a pull to help them, maybe pick up their fallen cone or buy them a new one. But why? You're not getting anything out of it, yet you still want to do something kind. This behavior, called altruism, is puzzling when you consider that nature seems to revolve around selfishness. But the truth is, helping others can often be a part of a strategy for survival, even when it looks like pure kindness. Take vampire bats, for example. These creatures have one of the most extreme diets in nature. They live solely on blood, and it's not easy to come by. A bat that fails to feed on a given night might starve if it goes too long without blood. But here's where it gets interesting. Vampire bats often help each other out. If one bat has a successful night, it might regurgitate some of its blood meal and share it with a hungry bat that had no luck. It seems like a selfless act, but there's more going on beneath the surface. Studies have shown that vampire bats keep track of who shares with them and who doesn't. It's like they have a mental list of who owes them a favor. So, while it looks like pure altruism, one bat helping another, it's actually a system of reciprocal kindness. The bats that share today are more likely to receive help tomorrow when they're in need. It's a long-term strategy where helping others boosts your chances of survival in the future. Essentially, the bats are saying, "I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine." This kind of behavior isn't limited to animals. Humans do it too. Think about it. Have you ever lent someone money, helped a friend move, or shared notes with a classmate? Chances are, you expected that they would return the favor at some point. You're not helping them because you want to feel good, although that might be part of it. You're helping because you know that in the long run, the favor will likely come back to you. It's an unspoken contract, just like with the vampire bats. In nature, altruism can also extend to non-relatives. One of the most famous examples of this is seen in birds called Arabian babblers. These birds live in small groups, and members will take turns being the lookout while others feed. The lookout, perched high in a tree, warns the group of approaching predators. This job comes with some serious risks. The lookout bird could be spotted and attacked by a hawk or eagle. So why do it? Here's where it gets clever. The babblers that volunteer for lookout duty often end up being the most respected birds in the group. Their willingness to put themselves in danger for the group earns them social status, which leads to benefits like access to better feeding spots or higher chances of mating. In this case, the altruism isn't as selfless as it seems. It's a calculated risk that pays off in the form of social rewards. The Good Samaritan, altruism in humans. Now let's talk about humans. Have you ever heard of the Good Samaritan? It's a story from the Bible about a man who helps a stranger on the side of the road, even though he has nothing to gain from it. This idea of helping others, even strangers, is deeply ingrained in many cultures. We praise people who sacrifice for others, and we admire those who stand up for the weak or give to charity. But why do we do it? One explanation is that humans, like other animals, have evolved to be social creatures. We live in groups, and in these groups, cooperation and kindness are often rewarded. Just like the vampire bats, when we help someone, we might not expect an immediate reward, but we know that being kind builds relationships. Those relationships can help us down the road, whether it's through friendship, alliances, or even professional connections. A fascinating study was done in the 1970s, where psychologists set up a scenario to test how likely people were to help others in need. In one version of the experiment, participants were walking across a university campus when they saw a man slumped over, clearly in distress. The participants were in a rush, late for an important appointment. As they passed by the man, some stopped to help, while others hurried past. What made the difference? It turned out that the participants who had recently heard a lecture on the Good Samaritan story were more likely to stop and help. The study showed that being reminded of altruism made people more likely to act in a kind way, even when it was inconvenient for them. But why did they help at all? The answer may lie in our social structures. By helping others, we create a reputation for being kind and reliable. In the long run, this reputation benefits us by drawing others to us, building friendships, and making people more likely to help us in return. In another case, researchers studied how people behave in emergencies. You might think that when disaster strikes, everyone would run for themselves, but that's not always what happens. During the 9/11 attacks in New York, for instance, there were numerous stories of people helping complete strangers escape the towers, even at the risk of their own lives. These acts of heroism seem completely selfless, but they reflect something deeper in human nature. In times of crisis, our instincts to help others kick in, because historically, working together increased the odds of group survival. Let's look at a more recent example. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a surge in altruistic behavior. People donated money, volunteered at food banks, and even made masks for healthcare workers. These acts of kindness weren't just about feeling good, they were about creating a stronger, more resilient community. By helping each other, people were building a network of mutual support, which ultimately helped everyone survive a difficult time. Even though these behaviors seem generous, they're rooted in the same genetic strategies we've seen in other animals. Altruism, whether in vampire bats or human beings, is often a strategy for long-term survival. When we help others, we're investing in the social bonds that will help us down the line, just like the bats that share blood with their friends. The wild world of altruism, other strange cases. Let's venture into the weird world of altruism with one of the most fascinating cases in nature, the slime mold. Slime molds are single-celled organisms that live in soil and feed on bacteria. They're pretty ordinary for most of their lives, moving through the soil in search of food. But when times get tough, like when food runs out, something truly bizarre happens. The individual slime mold cells start to come together, forming a single multicellular structure that moves as one. In this new superorganism, some of the cells sacrifice themselves to form a stalk that holds up a spore-producing structure. These spores will eventually be released into the environment to find better conditions, continuing the species. But here's the crazy part. The cells that make up the stalk die in the process. They don't get to reproduce or pass on their genes. So why do they do it? The answer lies in kin selection. Most of the cells in a slime mold are genetically identical, which means that by helping the others, even at the cost of their own lives, the sacrificing cells are still ensuring that their genes survive. This behavior is a dramatic form of altruism, giving up your life for the good of the group. Another strange case comes from ground squirrels. These animals live in colonies, and they have a unique way of warning each other about predators. If a squirrel spots a hawk or a coyote, it will stand up on its hind legs and give a loud alarm call. This call alerts the other squirrels to take cover, but it also puts the caller at risk. By drawing attention to itself, the alarm-calling squirrel is more likely to be attacked by the predator. So why would a squirrel risk its life to save others? Like with the slime molds, the answer comes down to kin selection. Ground squirrels live in groups made up of close relatives. By warning the others, the squirrel is protecting its family, and therefore, its own genes. Even if the alarm caller gets caught, the genes it shares with its relatives will live on in the rest of the group. This kind of behavior shows just how complex altruism can be. It's not just about being nice or selfless, it's about survival in the most roundabout way. Whether it's a slime mold sacrificing itself to build a stalk, or a ground squirrel risking its life to warn others, the underlying motive is always the same: protecting the genes. Part 2. The power of deception and manipulation. In the natural world, there's another crucial strategy at play: deception. While cooperation and altruism play a big part in survival, trickery can also be a powerful tool. Many species have evolved ways to deceive others, allowing them to gain an advantage without having to fight or compete directly. In some ways, this can be seen as the dark side of survival. Genes that figure out how to get ahead by lying or cheating often win the race. The cuckoo's con, one of the most fascinating examples of deception in nature, comes from the cuckoo bird. Cuckoos are infamous for their trickery. Instead of building nests and raising their own young, they lay their eggs in the nests of other bird species. The unsuspecting foster parents then raise the cuckoo chicks as their own, completely unaware that they've been duped. The cuckoo chick hatches faster than the host bird's own eggs, and usually pushes the other eggs out of the nest to eliminate competition for food. Why do cuckoos use this strategy? It's simple. It allows them to pass their genes on without the effort of raising their young. The energy that would have been spent on parenting can instead go toward finding more mates and laying more eggs in other birds' nests. It's a devious plan, but it works brilliantly for the cuckoo's genes. Deception in predators and prey deception isn't just limited to birds. In the animal kingdom, many predators use tricks to catch their prey. The anglerfish is a master of this art. It has a glowing lure attached to its head, which it dangles in front of its mouth like a fishing pole. Small fish, attracted to the light, swim too close, only to be snapped up in the anglerfish's jaws. This clever trick allows the anglerfish to ambush its prey without having to expend energy chasing it. But deception works both ways. Many prey species have evolved ways to trick predators too. Some butterflies, for example, have markings on their wings that look like large, intimidating eyes. When a predator approaches, it's fooled into thinking the butterfly is a much larger and more dangerous creature, and it backs off. This kind of deception can be the difference between life and death for the butterfly, allowing it to live long enough to reproduce and pass on its genes. Part 3. Sexual Selection, the gene's masterpiece. One of the most fascinating aspects of evolution is how genes influence reproduction. It's not just about survival anymore, it's about attracting mates and ensuring that one's genes are passed on to the next generation. This is where sexual selection comes into play, and it leads to some of the most extravagant and strange behaviors in nature. Peacocks and their ridiculous tails. Perhaps the most famous example of sexual selection is the peacock's tail. Male peacocks have enormous, colorful tails that they use to attract females. From an evolutionary standpoint, these tails are a bit ridiculous. They're heavy, awkward, and make the peacock more visible to predators. So why have they evolved? The answer lies in sexual selection. Female peacocks prefer males with the biggest, brightest tails because they see it as a sign of good health and strong genes. In other words, if a male can survive with such an extravagant tail, he must be genetically superior. As a result, males with larger tails are more likely to attract mates and pass on their genes, even if the tails make survival a bit more challenging. This process is known as the handicap principle, where traits that seem to be a disadvantage, like a peacock's giant tail, actually signal superior genetic fitness because the animal can survive despite the handicap. Bowerbirds, nature's interior designers. While peacocks rely on flashy feathers, other animals have developed more creative ways to impress potential mates. Male bowerbirds, for instance, build elaborate structures called bowers to attract females. These bowers are decorated with colorful objects, everything from berries to bits of plastic. The male spends hours perfecting his bower, and when a female approaches, he performs an elaborate dance to show off his construction skills. Interestingly, the male bowerbird's appearance isn't nearly as important as his building and dancing abilities. Females choose mates based on the quality of the bower and the performance, not the male's physical attributes. This shows how genes can influence behavior in unexpected ways. A male bowerbird that builds a beautiful structure is signaling that he has good problem-solving skills, patience, and strength, all traits that indicate strong genes. Human sexual selection. Sexual selection isn't just something that happens in the animal kingdom. Humans are also influenced by it, although in more subtle ways. For example, humans often use displays of wealth, status, or intelligence to attract mates. These traits signal to potential partners that an individual is capable of providing resources, protection, or good genes for future offspring. Throughout history, people have engaged in all sorts of behaviors that don't seem directly related to survival but are crucial for attracting mates. Whether it's building monuments, composing symphonies, or winning a Nobel Prize, these achievements often serve as signals of genetic fitness. They show that an individual has the creativity, intelligence, or determination to succeed, and these traits are attractive when it comes to reproduction. Part 4. Memes, the cultural gene. Richard Dawkins introduced a groundbreaking concept in The Selfish Gene, the idea of the meme. Just as genes carry biological information from one generation to the next, memes carry cultural information. Memes are ideas, behaviors, or trends that spread from person to person, evolving over time just like genes do. The spread of memes. Think of a popular song that gets stuck in your head. The more people hear it, the more it spreads, much like a gene spreading through a population. Memes can be anything from catchy phrases and viral videos to religious beliefs and political ideologies. Like genes, memes compete for survival. Some memes spread quickly and dominate culture for a time, while others fade away. The success of a meme depends on its ability to capture attention and be passed on. A meme that's easy to remember and share will spread faster than one that's complex or boring. This is why simple, catchy ideas often become viral sensations, while more nuanced or complicated ideas struggle to gain traction. Memes and human evolution. Memes are important because they shape human culture and behavior. In some ways, memes have become just as important as genes in determining who we are. The values, customs, and beliefs that shape human societies are all influenced by memes. For example, the idea of democracy is a meme that has spread across the world, influencing how countries are governed. Memes can also evolve and change over time. Just like a gene mutation can lead to new traits in an organism, a small change in a meme can lead to a completely new cultural phenomenon. Think about how social media platforms like Twitter or TikTok have changed the way we communicate. These platforms have allowed memes to spread faster and further than ever before, creating new cultural trends at lightning speed. In many ways, memes are the cultural equivalent of genes. They evolve, spread, and shape the world around us, influencing everything from our daily habits to the way we organize societies. Conclusion: actionable steps for the reader. So what can you take away from this understanding of selfish genes, altruism, deception, sexual selection, and memes? Here are a few actionable steps you can apply to your own life. Recognize the balance between competition and cooperation. In both nature and human society, survival often requires a mix of competition and cooperation. Know when to compete and when to collaborate. Whether it's at work, in school, or in social situations, understanding this balance can help you build stronger relationships and achieve your goals. Use altruism strategically. Acts of kindness often come back to you. Help others when you can, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because in the long run, those connections will benefit you. Build networks based on reciprocity and mutual support, and you'll see the benefits over time. Understand the power of deception. Deception isn't always about lying, it's often about strategy. In your personal and professional life, being aware of how others might use deception, and how you might too, strategically, can help you navigate tricky situations. Leverage your strengths in sexual selection, whether it's through showing your skills, talents, or other attributes. Remember that sexual selection is about more than just looks. Develop your strengths, work on your talents, and display the qualities that make you a valuable partner, both personally and professionally. Shape your personal memes. The ideas, values, and beliefs you spread will influence others. Be mindful of the memes you adopt and share. Whether it's on social media or in conversations with friends, think about the impact your ideas can have. Choose memes that align with your goals and values, and don't be afraid to adapt and evolve them over time. These steps aren't just about surviving, they're about thriving. Whether it's through cooperation, competition, kindness, or creativity, you now have the tools to understand the hidden forces shaping your life and the world around you. Remember, genes may be selfish, but you have the power to shape your actions and your future. Thank you for completing another BrevRead video. Like and subscribe to see more of our videos. If you have a particular book that you would like us to summarize, please share it in the comments section below.